You're just not the same anymore. Those 6 words shattered 30 years of my life in less than 30 seconds. I remember standing in the kitchen of our Spanish-style home in Santa Monica, the late afternoon sun slanting through the arched windows, casting golden light across the tiles. I had just finished preparing his favorite dinner, grilled halibut with lemon butter and roasted fennel. I was wiping my hands on a linen towel when Dean, my husband of 3 decades, dropped the bomb. I think we should talk. He had that hesitant tone I knew too well. The one he used when he was about to back out of something he promised or admit he'd forgotten an anniversary. But this was different. His voice trembled. I feel like you've changed, he said, not meeting my eyes. You're just not the same anymore. For a second I thought I hadn't heard him right. Excuse me, I said, setting the towel down. I mean, we're different people now, he continued, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. You've become comfortable, predictable. I need something fresh. Something exciting. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire I hadn't seen coming. I blinked. Tried to breathe. This man I had met when I was 24, and he was a broke music producer. This man whose career I had supported with my 2 jobs while he found himself, whose socks I had hand-washed when we couldn't afford a new washer, whose dreams I had defended when even his own family said he was wasting time. This man was telling me I was no longer exciting? I laughed. Not from amusement. The kind of laugh that escapes when your soul has no other exit for the pain. He shifted awkwardly, probably expecting tears. But tears hadn't arrived yet. Just numbness. Is there someone else? I asked quietly. His hesitation was answer enough. There's someone I've been seeing. Just recently. I didn't plan it. How old? I interrupted. What? How old is she? He looked down. 28. Of course. 28. She probably wore crop tops and called brunch a personality trait. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw that dinner across the room. But all I could do was stand there, frozen in that kitchen we'd remodeled together 5 years ago, while my husband of 30 years packed his things. He didn't even spend the night. By 8:45 p.m., the only trace of Dean left in that house was an indentation in the leather couch cushion and a receipt from Aruhan he'd left on the table. That night I sat at the edge of our bed, no, my bed now, and stared at the space he used to occupy. I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stared at the ceiling, the sound of ocean waves barely audible through the open window. Somewhere down the street a couple laughed. Somewhere else someone was being loved. And in that moment, I felt a loneliness I hadn't felt since I was 19, standing in my mother's kitchen in San Diego after my father walked out. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was Jacinta Alvarez, 55 years old, the woman who raised 2 sons, rebuilt a catering business after the pandemic wiped it out, survived breast cancer at 47, and never once asked anyone for pity. I didn't know how to be this version of me. Alone. The next morning my best friend Marisol showed up without knocking. She had a key. She found me still in my robe, staring into a mug of cold coffee. She didn't say a word. Just wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "He's a fool." I finally cried then. Cried until I couldn't feel my face. Until the tea she made me went cold. Until something deep inside me said, no more. The next few weeks were blurry. Mornings felt the same. I'd still wake at 6:30 like clockwork, even though there was no Dean beside me fumbling for the snooze button. His side of the bed stayed untouched, too untouched. I tried flipping the pillows, changing the sheets, even sleeping sideways once. None of it helped. The house felt like a hotel I hadn't meant to check into. Too big. Too cold. Too full of echoes. I went through the motions. Watered the succulents on the balcony, answered emails from my former catering clients, reheated leftovers I didn't want to eat. Marisol came by almost every evening, bless her, with Thai food, fresh gossip from her bookstore downtown, and absolutely zero tolerance for self-pity. "You need a new project," she said one night, plopping down a giant box on my dining table. "What's this?" I asked, cautiously peeling back the tape. He grinned. "Your old jewelry tools. I found them in my garage. Remember when you used to make those seashell earrings for the farmer's market?" I stared at the contents of the box. Tarnished pliers, dusty containers of beads, a half-finished necklace with a broken clasp. I hadn't touched any of it in years. I was 25. I said. That was a hobby. No, she corrected. That was you before life distracted you. Maybe it's time to meet her again. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a single lamp on, turning over each bead in my hand like a memory. I didn't know what I was doing. My hands were stiff. The wire kept slipping. But for the first time in weeks, I lost track of time. At 2:14 a.m., I finished my first pair of earrings. Imperfect silver hoops with tiny blue glass stones that reminded me of La Jolla's tide pools. I laid them on the counter like they were sacred. Like they mattered. And somehow, they did. The next day I opened a blank Etsy page. I typed, Alvarez Arte Bijou. It sounded elegant. Rooted. A little mysterious. I uploaded 3 listings, 2 necklaces and the earrings. Then I closed the laptop and told myself I'd delete it in a week. But I didn't. Because 5 days later someone from Napa Valley bought the blue earrings. I stared at the order confirmation like it was a love letter. As days passed I created more. Polished, twisted, shaped, burned my fingertips on solder. I burned through my sadness too, melted it down, repurposed it into art. Every piece felt like taking a piece of my former life and turning it into something new. I signed up for a local craft fair in Venice Beach. I ordered little thank you cards with the message, made with love by a woman who finally chose herself. And I meant it. By month 2 I had 5 regular customers. By month 4 I had a small wait list for custom orders. By month 6 I made more than I ever did running the catering business Dean told me to just do part-time. I started wearing lipstick again, not for anyone, just because it made me feel awake. I walked the cliffs of Palisades Park at sunrise with a new playlist. Celia Cruz, Erykah Badu and a little bit of Alanis Morissette for flavor. I made risotto at midnight. I read poetry again. I even fixed the leaky faucet myself after watching 4 YouTube tutorials. It wasn't perfect. Some nights I still missed him. Or maybe just the idea of him. Of us. But I was no longer waiting for someone to tell me who I was. I was remembering. And then, just as I was starting to feel steady again, it happened. A knock at the door. Familiar. I froze mid-stir of my chamomile tea, the scent of honey and cinnamon drifting through the room. When I opened the door, there he was. Dean. Same black leather duffel bag. Same sheepish eyes. Same cologne I had stopped smelling on the pillow months ago. Hey, he said. Can we talk? My pulse slowed. I looked past him, over his shoulder at the horizon. The sun was beginning to dip, painting the sky in bruised oranges and dusty purples. And in that moment I realized. I didn't owe him anything. Not my tears. Not my time. Not my doorway. But I said nothing. Not yet. Is what I did next. That would be my favorite part of the story. He stood on my doorstep like someone who'd simply forgotten their keys. Jacinta, he said, eyes soft. I made a mistake. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, taking him in. Same tailored jacket. Same nervous shuffle in his stance. But the spark in his eyes? Gone. Replaced by something hollow. Something used up. Can I come in? He asked. The question hung there like an echo. And for a moment, just one, I imagined saying yes. Not because I wanted him back. But because I wanted to see how it would feel to hold all the power for once. But I didn't move. Instead, I let silence wrap around us like a second skin. The kind that makes men like him uncomfortable. You said I changed, I finally said. My voice was steady. You told me I was too safe, too predictable. But now here you are. What happened to your something fresh? He looked away, then rubbed the back of his neck like he always did when he was caught in a lie. Camila. She left, he mumbled. Moved to Austin to open some retreat center. I don't know. I almost laughed. Almost. So you thought you'd come home, I said flatly. No, that's not it. I missed us. I've been thinking about you. About how I ruined something good. He pulled out a folded piece of notebook paper from his coat pocket. It was worn at the edges. I wrote some things down. Things I wanted to say. I held up my hand. Dean, stop. I don't need an apology you wrote in a parking lot. This isn't a rom-com and you're not the ending I'm rooting for. He looked wounded. Like he expected a woman who waited. Like he thought heartbreak made me weak. But heartbreak didn't destroy me. It rebuilt me. Jacinta, I don't expect us to just pick up where we left off. I know I hurt you. But maybe we could talk. Start over. I stepped outside then onto the porch, into the cool evening air, and gently closed the door behind me. I didn't want his energy inside my home. You know what the funny thing is, Dean? I said calmly. You left me thinking I'd fall apart. But I didn't. I found myself. And I like her. He blinked. What do you mean? I mean, I own a business now. I've got customers who wait 2 weeks for a pair of earrings I made with my own hands. I have dinners with people who actually listen when I speak. I don't sit around missing what was never real to begin with. His face twitched, a mix of regret and disbelief. I never meant to. But you did, I interrupted. You left me like I was disposable. Like I was a phase. Just then the sound of soft laughter drifted from inside the house. A voice, warm, melodic, unmistakably male, called out, Jacinta, do you want me to open the wine now or wait for the empanadas to cool? Dean turned slightly toward the door. And I watched his shoulders tense. I have company, I said, meeting his eyes. A friend visiting from Argentina. His name is Mateo. We met at a gallery opening in Echo Park. Dean opened his mouth but no words came out. I smiled politely. He teaches sculpture. He says my hands are made for creation, not cleaning up other people's messes. I let that sit for a moment. Then I stepped back toward the door. Good night, Dean. And just like that I walked back inside. Not to prove a point. Not to twist the knife. But because I had dinner waiting. And a man inside who saw me, not for what I used to be but for everything I had become. Dean thought he could just leave and come back. What he didn't know was, I had already started leaving him long before he packed his bag. Not physically. Not yet. But emotionally. I began walking away the first night he came home late without an explanation, and didn't bother to make one. It was 2 months before he officially left. I'd made spaghetti carbonara from scratch, even grated the cheese the way he liked. Parmigiano, not pecorino. He came in, barely kissed my cheek and said, Had lunch already? Not hungry. That was the first time I didn't argue. I just nodded and wrapped the leftovers in foil. The next day I threw them out untouched. That same week he started taking calls in the garage. Said it was bad reception in the kitchen. But we both knew Verizon doesn't drop in Santa Monica. I began noticing new cologne on his shirts. Expensive. Not the earthy sandalwood I used to buy for him every Christmas. And the receipts in his coat pocket? Not for coffee shops near the studio. They were from rooftop bars in West Hollywood, the kind where no one orders water. So I waited. Still, I told myself, you're overreacting, Jacinta. Don't give him a reason to leave. That's the part that hurts most, I think. The way women are trained to shrink ourselves for the sake of keeping someone who's already walking away. A week before he moved out, I found a charger on the nightstand. Not mine. Not his. I held it in my hand like a detective in a bad TV drama. White cord, pink trim. Cute. Full. Disposable. Just like how he saw me now. I didn't confront him. Not then. Because by then I was already done trying to be enough for someone who never saw the abundance I gave him. I just kept moving forward, quietly. Like someone preparing for a soft escape. I started journaling again. Every morning, black coffee, 3 pages. No editing. No censorship. Just truth. And every truth I wrote led to the same sentence. You don't need to wait for him to leave to start choosing yourself. So I began. Small things at first. I stopped making dinner at 6:30 on the dot. I stopped folding his socks. I stopped asking where he was. Instead, I started sketching again. I started burning lavender candles even though he said they gave him headaches. I played records he hated and danced barefoot in the kitchen. By the time he said we should talk, I had already rehearsed every version of that goodbye in my head. But the real version still stung more than I expected. He didn't know that while he was flirting over cocktails with a woman born after Nirvana's last album, I was getting email notifications that someone in Vermont had just bought my ocean glass bracelet. He didn't know that while he was lying to my face, I was building a life behind his back, not out of spite but out of survival. He didn't know that I had already started imagining a version of me without him, and I liked her more every day. There's a kind of quiet revenge in watching someone who underestimated you realize you're not standing still. Dean didn't come back to a broken woman in need of rescue. He came back to someone he couldn't reach anymore. Not because she hated him, but because she had outgrown the version of herself who needed his love to feel worthy. And that's what he never saw coming. 2 days after Dean showed up, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Handwritten. Cream envelope. No return address, but I knew that messy handwriting anywhere. Inside, 3 pages front and back. He had written me a confession. Or a performance. Maybe both. He talked about guilt. About regret. About the fantasy he mistook for freedom. He said Camila had been exciting, yes, but also chaotic, insecure, immature. She never saw me the way you did, he wrote. She didn't know me the way you know me. I read the letter once. Fully. Quietly. Then I folded it back up and slid it into the same drawer where I keep the last copy of our wedding photos, untouched since the day he left. I didn't cry. I didn't respond. Because the truth is, I already did all my screaming in silence. There's something powerful about the words you don't say. The calls you don't return. The doors you don't open twice. Dean wanted closure. But I had already closed the book and started writing a new one. That night, I did something I hadn't done since I was 22. I wrote a letter to myself. No fancy stationery. Just a college-ruled notebook and a ballpoint pen. I poured a glass of red wine, put on an old Esperanza Spalding album, and sat by the window while the city exhaled around me. I wrote, Dear Jacinta, I am proud of you. I am proud of the way you didn't break when you had every reason to. I am proud of the earrings you made, the business you built, the boundaries you honored. I am proud that you didn't scream when he deserved it. I am proud that you grew even when it hurt. I am proud that you are finally beautifully yours. Love. Me. I signed it, dated it, folded it, and placed it inside the jewelry box my grandmother left me, next to a pendant I'm saving for a granddaughter I haven't met yet. Because one day she'll ask me about love. And I'll tell her. Sometimes the person who breaks your heart also sets you free. And the silence you keep afterward? That's where your strength lives. The next morning I saw Dean's contact still sitting in my phone. I didn't block him. I didn't delete him. I just renamed the contact, Don't. Because I didn't need to erase him to move on. I just needed the reminder. Never again. The first time I opened the door to Dean I lost myself. Second, I didn't. The third time never came. 3 months passed. Then 6. One day I walked past our old anniversary spot. The cafe on Montana Avenue where he used to hold my hand across a wobbly wooden table and promise we'd grow old together. The barista still remembered my name. But she asked if I'd moved away. I haven't seen you with your husband in a long time. I smiled. He's the one who moved, I said. I just kept going. In July, I threw my first solo exhibit at a small art gallery near downtown LA. It was called Reclamation. 10 pieces. Each one made from materials that had once been discarded or broken. Seashells, rusted keys, tarnished silver, melted gold from an old wedding band I'd smelted down with my own hands. People wept. People clapped. A woman in her 60s came up to me afterward and whispered, Thank you. I thought I was the only one who survived loving the wrong man. I hugged her. Tightly. That fall I went to Argentina, not for Matteo, but for me. I walked the cobblestone streets of San Telmo, sipped espresso by the windowsill of a bookstore in Buenos Aires, and let myself be moved by colors, music, strangers' faces. I bought fabric, stones, beads. Stories really, waiting to be turned into art. I didn't post much. Didn't need to. The life I was living didn't need likes. It needed light. And I had found mine. By winter I moved into a smaller house in Echo Park. Lemon trees in the yard, hardwood floors that creaked when I danced barefoot, and a little studio out back with skylights that poured morning gold over my workbench. One day Marisol visited. She stood in the doorway of my studio, looked around and said, You finally look like you belong in your own life. He was right. For the first time in years. I wasn't performing love. I wasn't surviving silence. I was creating. Thriving. Choosing. Dean sent one last email around the holidays. Subject line, Would love to talk. I never opened it. I didn't need to. Because the door stayed closed. Not from bitterness, but from wholeness. You see, closure isn't something they give you. It's something you build, with time, with tears, with scissors and silver and self-respect. And when people ask me now, was it worth it, all that pain, that heartbreak, starting over at 55? I smile. Because starting over wasn't the hard part. Believing I deserved to, that was. No. Now I wake up to the smell of citrus in my garden, the sound of vinyl spinning softly in the background, and my hands, always moving, always making, always mine. Because the best revenge isn't vindictive. It's quiet, soft. It's beautiful. And it's yours.